Hi, Sita. Thank you so much for that talk. That was really, really good. Just to get started, so what inspired you to do your master's research on this topic and with this user group?
Um, so I I think I wanted to I had a couple of ideas in mind, but I wanted to work on the side of warm technology, of technology that goes beyond problem solving and is a lot more humane in its intention. And I think that was when I remembered a lot of instances with my grandparents. I have two sets of grandparents, both on my maternal and paternal side. And during COVID, I was able to spend a lot of time with them. And every time I met them, there was always some kind of support that they needed with their phones or with their laptops. And this was not once or twice. This was during every meeting. And when I spoke to this with about this to some of my friends, I realized that this is something recurring in everyone's relationships with their grandparents or elderly friends. And I realized that if this is so common and not a lot of people are looking into it, I really would love to research into this for my master's. And that's how this came to be.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm sure so many people can relate. I have a neighbor who is in that same boat, and sometimes I'll just like go and try and help with a tech issue because they can't get their email working or something. So yeah, definitely see it within the community as well. Um, there's one interesting question. So I think we've kind of answered half of it. So this work was based on Sita's master's, but the second half of the question is, what were some of the objectives and how did you decide that these were the right activities to run to gain the answers you needed? And this person thought that your research methods were really interesting and unique. So that's why they wanted to know about this.
Thank you for that. In terms of the objectives, so this was master's, so I had to present a thesis at the end of this. So I had to dig in. I had to do some research. I had an option of choosing qualitative or quantitative methods, and I chose to take a more qualitative focus. And in terms of and because I was a design student, I also wanted to have a design exploration at the end of this research as something that I put my hands into trying apart from the research. And in terms of choosing these activities to gain answers, so I took it in an iterative process. So I first decided to do some interviews, some surveys, and do some precedent studies. And I put together my data just to see what came out of it. And I realized that what I got was a lot of current needs, current user requirements, or current participant needs. But I realized that when I'm digging into such a space, I kind of wanted to know what my participants envisioned for their future. It's not a matter of what they would like or what they want for now, but say in 5 years, in 10 years, what are their wants and expectations? It's not and I designed those participatory activities um, specifically to dig into those subconscious wishes and wants of designing for a better future, not just for a current what is and what would you like or what would you want. I think those were my biggest decision making factors in choosing these activities. Oh, I can't hear you. Just a second. Is there something wrong with my
I'm
audio?
muted. No, no,
Okay.
I'm just muted. Can you hear me now? Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think as well, like when you're doing something that's more exploratory or more playful, then the imagination can run a bit more versus maybe when you're like you have examples of what's not working with a phone or the current technology. So that makes sense why those methods worked so well for you there. Um, the next question, so they say, great work on your thesis project, Sita. I think Una is a really nice concept. It works well for people who are already comfortable enough using a smartphone. Have you have you any thoughts on how you might design a way to improve digital literacy for those who don't have confidence or skills in using a smartphone?
Oh, thank you. But interestingly, I kind of wanted Una to help bring people who don't have a lot of who don't have a lot of confidence in using smartphones or laptops into the fold, because um, when you say, when you buy a senior who's not used to technology, like a new smartphone, it's a lot to figure out on their own. But they do trust in their social relationships and the people around them. So I envisioned Una to kind of use those social relationships, the trust built inside of them, to slowly bring technology into the fold. It's to say, so if say a senior who's not used to technology, if they installed Una on their phone, they probably wouldn't know what to do with it on day one. But if they can say coordinate with someone they know, say a son or a daughter or a neighbor who has Una on the other side, and who can say maybe 3 sessions with them in person, and then the rest 3 sessions using Una, and they slowly introduce apps to them, maybe over 6 months or 3 months, they achieve a certain level of familiarity with using the device, then they're like, okay, then they might be open to trying new features. It's going to be super slow, but at least it's a small start to bring people in.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess like often in design, we talk about usability, but what you're talking about is learnability and how can you help someone learn along the way, even with support, and maybe have enough confidence to keep going.
Definitely. And because this involves social relationships, it's not just about making things easy for the learner, but also for the one who's teaching, because they spend ample time in troubleshooting, or that's quite a bit of time we put into it. So I think it's important for this to be a sustainable solution, that it's easy on both the learner's part and, and also on the part of whoever's teaching.
Yeah, definitely. Um, There's an interesting question. So, do you think that government has a role to provide basic education to seniors? Are you aware of any governments that do this?
The governments definitely they have a I wouldn't call it a role to provide basic education, but more in terms of, if say you're rolling out, if the government is rolling out a new service that's meant for all people to use, and say if it's super critical, like say a lot of the apps that I think every country introduced during COVID was, say, before travel you had to fill out a form, and these things became mandatory. And when I was working in the Western Seniors Network, I realized that there was no there was no onboarding for this. Seniors did not know what to do with these forms. All they knew was that if they wanted to book a flight, they were stuck with this app and they couldn't go forward. So it's great if every time a new update or a service is being rolled out online, if they can plan for some aspects of inclusive onboarding for seniors, of say maybe even partner for the initial few months with local tech coaches or voluntary organizations in introducing this app to seniors, or maybe having more community programs of sorts, or maybe for a certain period of time even allowing for in-person or call or troubleshooting features. um, I know it's kind of it's labor intensive and it's expensive, but at least for the initial bit of, say, introducing a service, it goes a long way to slow down that onboarding process for seniors.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think too, like at that time when you talked about the apps for flying, there was no paper version often as well. So everyone was kind of forced on a smartphone, which was also a challenge with that. I do know that sometimes, just to answer the question as well, from what I've seen, sometimes libraries do offer training as well that are more about every like general knowledge. So in Vancouver, there was definitely that. So maybe where you are, Andy, there might be that too. But yeah, I like your idea though, Sita, about thinking about the actual products and requirements of the services that government offers. we've run out of time for questions, but is it okay if we post the last two in the reflections channel and you answer them there? Yeah?
Oh, sounds good.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Great. Thank you so much. So we'll now take a break. I will post we have a form for feedback, and I'll post that in Slack. I don't have it on me right now. So I'll post that on Slack. So if you can give Sita any feedback, that's always really helpful for us speakers and workshop facilitators. So we'd really appreciate that. We'll now take a break and we will come back in at the next hour, so like in 19 minutes for Imrose's talk. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you back then. Bye, Sita.